Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining us today. We are the Hoopsters League of Action Heroes. And as part of our show, we have a lot of focus on life skills and developing life skills through the arts. So today we have with us Mr. Jagdish Raja, who is the founder of Jagriti Theatre and is also a renowned theatre personality in our city. And he will talk to us about why theatre is important for children and what are the life skills that one can build with it. Hello, sir. Welcome to our show.
Thank you for having me.
Our pleasure. So before we start the questions about our subject today, my question to you is, why did you agree to do this interview today?
Because I know your father, Bala, known him for many years.
Right.
He's an
He's an...
I
Right,
had no choice.
right. Okay, that's a perfect reason right there. So, sir, tell me, how did you get into theatre? How did this interest you?
The thing is, I'm glad we started like this. People talk about getting into theatre. What did all of us do as children?
Right.
Did you play hospital?
Yes.
Cops and robbers?
Right.
Did you, if you had a poultry farm, did your son come in as a supplier of food, poultry feed,
Right.
and discuss with you how he could supply you with feed?
Right.
What were you doing? You were play acting. And every child anywhere in the world has memories of play acting.
Right.
What is play acting?
Role play, like.
Thank you. Role play is a much later management game that we play. But theatre is in our blood.
Right.
It's in our culture. It's part of our children's societal interactions.
Right.
We've all done it.
Hmm.
Some of us carry on to do it like Shah Rukh Khan. Others carry on to do it like Jagdish. But, there's really been no difference.
Right.
Some of us do it for a living.
Hmm.
Yeah, I must admit that Rundati, my wife and I, do this for a living in that we have our own theatre, a 200 space, 200 seat auditorium in Whitefield.
Right.
So this is our basic livelihood.
Hmm.
Of course, badly affected with the recent pandemic.
Of course.
But what I need to point out also is they talk about amateur theatre. You've heard the term amateur theatre.
Right.
All of us. Amateur, there's a tendency for us to denigrate amateur to being slipshod, kya hang, arey chalo, chalta hai. But it's not. The root word for amateur is amatori, which in the Latin means lover.
Right.
You do something for the love.
Hmm.
Sachin Tendulkar played cricket for the love.
Hmm.
Right? He became a wealthy man in the process. But he primarily loved what he was doing.
Right.
So this business of professional, amateur and professional, we need to look at very carefully.
Right.
Live theatre, especially English language live theatre in India, cannot give you a living. But fortunately, many of us who are in this art form
Right.
get money from corporate voiceovers,
Hmm.
corporate role plays,
Right.
which do help, which was very different when I was the age that you are.
Right.
But that's one thing we need to get rid of. Amateur, childlike. It's not. And the children of today, I'm glad to say, we have a lot of students in Jagriti who are studying drama and speech. They're doing this with or without culminating in a Trinity College London certificate,
Right.
of which we are the Bangalore hub. But these children are doing it. They've done it for many years. Some of them have been with us from when we opened in 2011, 10 years ago. And I think we need to speak to them about how it has contributed to their lifestyles,
Right.
to their professional and societal presence.
Right.
Okay, I'm done.
So tell me, do you remember your first ever performance or show? What was that like? My first ever, like in a big theater, auditorium show.
It was quite honestly, it was a school production
Okay.
in Bombay. As I said, I'm a Bandra boy.
Right.
It was a Stanislaus High School production of that famous Scottish play, which shall be unmentionable in theatre etiquette or suspicion. We don't, not suspicion, sorry, theatre superstition.
Right.
We don't mention the name. But it's about the Scots trying hard to become king. Shakespeare. And we were on the stage of the Metro Cinema for the finals of the inter-school competition.
Hmm.
And I was playing the named character.
Hmm.
And at the end of the play, many of you will know this, he starts crossing swords with another. And he says, "Lay on, Macduff." And they go into a sword fight, which we did on the stage. And of course, the stage had the curtains drawn across, hiding the cinema screen. And from the wings, we had people saying, "You've won the prize, you've won the prize. Mind the curtains, mind the curtains. Please don't cut the curtains. You won the prize." This was my first experience of theatre in a public space to an audience.
Like I said,
Yes.
clearly you've been interested in acting from a very young age. So tell us, what are some of the biggest influences that it has had in your personality and on your personal life?
Very difficult because the thing is, what you tend to do is because you are in this direction of a extracurricular activity in school, you
Right.
tend to gather in groups where people are similarly interested.
Right.
We're all like-minded.
Hmm.
So obviously in school, we had our class productions, our inter-school productions, our inter-class productions within the school, and then our inter-school productions. So we tended to meet with the same kinds of people
Right.
from all over schools in Bombay.
Hmm.
And of course, we also had elocution competitions, which were inter-school, which was one standing on stage and reciting a poem. So how did this, I don't know if it had any great influence in my immediate, was I different to somebody who played cricket in school? Or was I different to somebody who was an athlete?
Hmm.
Not really. It didn't make much difference as such.
Hmm.
Because in those days in school, you were very much somebody following another extracurricular activity.
Right.
Passion.
Right.
Passion.
Right. So when you started theatre, like your plays and all of that in Bangalore, there was mostly Kannada and regional theatre that was popular. So in a way, you're one of the pioneers for English theatre in Bangalore. So take us through your journey. How was that like? How did you introduce people to this new world?
We arrived in Bangalore in the early 70s, at 72, I believe. And we bought what was then the Jagriti farm, a 3-acre farm in Whitefield, where we are now. But except it's now a block of flats with the theatre attached.
Right.
And anybody interested in seeing that can go to our website, which is jagritheatre.com. We arrived here, started farming. We did farming ourselves. We then got into poultry farming, where we had 6,000 eggers, poultry that laid eggs, as distinct from poultry that you broilers, which were meat birds. Because there's another story over here. When broilers first arrived, they were again about the early 70s. They were bred to be for the table. And they achieved an incredible weight, a marketable weight, within a period of, I think it was 8 weeks. 12.
Oh, okay.
And initially, the cook in the house, the lady of the house, would go out and buy what they call a broiler, broiler, meaning a bird that you broil.
Oh, okay.
They would put in the pressure cooker, put whatever else they had to put in it, put the water, switch it on. 20 minutes later, with whistle once, whistle twice, and they'd stop it, and they'd open the pressure cooker and look inside. There was no chicken. These broilers are bred and grown to be broiled in normal conditions.
Right.
You pressure cook them, and they literally disappear.
Okay, that is
So
new.
you had ladies of the house opening the pressure cooker, much anticipation about being able to serve something, and looking in there, and there was nothing. Even the bones had sort of disappeared in the pressure cooking. So you soon learned that you don't pressure cook broilers. Certainly not for 20 minutes.
Okay, this is something. This is new information to me. That's interesting. That's very interesting. So, what was your vision with the?
So sorry, we're talking about theatre, not broilers.
Sorry, my bad. Yes, continue.
And I still remember we went to the Bal Bhavan in Kaban Park. Have you been there?
Yes, of course.
You have. You've been to the theatre.
Yes, the open.
No, it's a closed space.
I only seen the open.
Bal Bhavan in Kaban Park. And if you started a play at 7 o'clock, you had to wait till about 10
Correct.
past.
I've been there. Correct. I've been there.
Because the train had its last journey.
Right.
And it would shake the theatre because it just ran. The tracks ran just behind the theatre. So you had to wait till that last train went and before you could start. And we went to Balgam. And in the box office, there was somebody we knew. We had met. And he said, "What are you doing here?" I said, "I'm buying tickets to the theatre." "What do you do?" He said, "I'm selling tickets." And this was Bangalore Little Theatre. And it was a production of 6 characters in the search of an author.
Oh, okay.
So we went and saw this. It was good. Nice evening. And of course, while we were chatting with him, he gave me a piece of paper and said, "Fill in your name and address and drop it back to me, because if you're interested in the theatre, we'll put you on our mailing list and call you." Which he did. And we were then called for a reading, which we went, both Arundhati and myself. And We finished the reading in the Indian Institute of Management classrooms, which were on the corner of Langford Road and Double.
Hmm.
I think somebody's talking about how they remember. It was a granite building,
Right.
and it was on the corner of Langford Road and I can't remember the other street. We went down the side. In fact, we knew people who lived on the street. But we filled in these details and dropped it off and went back to the Bangalore Club of which we were members.
Hmm.
And a few minutes later, Shiv Kumar, who was the chap I had been talking to in the box, comes running into the very excited, saying, "You've landed a part, you've landed a part." He gives Runa a hug. I didn't realize that it was such a great thing to be able to land a part in a theatre production.
Right.
This was 1977,
Hmm.
before you were born.
Hmm. Yes.
What?
Much before I was born.
Okay, so that's how we got into theatre. And surprisingly, in those days, we obviously did English plays,
Hmm.
American or British in English.
Hmm.
But there was a very regular audience for English language theatre.
Hmm. Hmm.
You could put a small ad,
Hmm.
that big. Well, we used to have them in column centimeters.
Hmm.
When I joined advertising, it was column inches. But by 1977, Deccan Herald started giving you advertising space in one column, centimeters. And you'd put a small ad on page 2 at the top of the page, and Chowdaya would be full.
Oh, okay.
And Chowdaya was 1,130 seats, if I remember right.
Hmm.
And it'll be filled up. We didn't have traffic. We didn't have television. We didn't have soap operas about mothers-in-law and sisters-in-law and spending time in the kitchen and getting beaten up and something else. We had none of that.
Right.
From Whitefield to Chowdaya would take 30 minutes
Hmm.
because you came out of the farm and you turned west and you were in Bangalore Club in 20.
Hmm.
There were no traffic lights. No traffic lights.
Wow.
Ah.
Unimaginable.
So English theatre had a following.
Right.
And there were people who were doing this as a hobby,
Mm-hmm.
but virtually full-time. Full-time meaning you did 2 or 3 productions in a year, which when you think about it, it was choosing the play, getting the cast, getting rehearsals going, booking the auditorium, which in those days, Chowdaya, which sat, as I say, just over 1,000,
Hmm.
was 3,000 rupees for the night.
Hmm.
There's where is 3 rupees a seat. And we'd sell tickets for, we've got posters up in Jagriti about plays at Chowdaya, where these seats were 5, 10, and 15 rupees. And it will be sold out.
Right.
So I still remember my chartered accountant friend of mine
Hmm.
who comes to me and says, "Hey, Jaggi, where will you get a business like this? Huh? You put an advert in Deccan Herald, you with your contacts will get credit in the paper." So I said, "Yeah, we get credit. Because we go through an ad agency. You get credit for the advertisement. The advertisement will cost you how much? Maximum 1,000. Then you sell average 3, 5, 15. The average is how much? 5, 10, 15. The average is 10. You make 10,000 rupees. The press ad costs you 1,000. It's all in cash. Where would you get a business like this? Because the rental for the job for Chowda was 3,000.
Right.
The publicity was 1,000. Costumes, etc., you normally made do. So you were making 7,000 on a 3,000 out, 4,000 out, 6,000 rupees for one show.
Right.
So amateur theatre was quite a lucrative hobby.
Right. And when you started Jagriti, the theatre, I think it's one of the only, you're one of the only few people who has their own auditorium, which is so amazing, like it's your own space and you can do your thing there. So what was your vision when you started it?
I think anybody in theatre would like to own their own space.
Right.
It's a dream.
Right.
I said, now that you own your own space, the dream has turned into a nightmare. No, because keeping a space, especially now in these conditions, you've got a team of people who look after the space, who help with the technicalities of lighting, sound, publicity, all of which are professional functions.
Right.
You've got, if these people are on the team, you've got to make sure that they are taken care of. So, running a space is not really the dream it was, as I said. It tends to become a nightmare. But would I not do it? Would I have not built Jagriti, or would Runa and I not build it? I don't think so at all. Because when I walk into that space, as we do, there's a feeling of, have we really done this? Is this? Does this exist? Is this ours? And of course, the answer to every question is yes.
Right.
So it's a passion that's, well, I'm hoping that others sharing this with us are going to say, good on you, lad. Good on you, mate. Shriram Iyer has got a thumbs up. Okay. So, mind you, we've jumped a lot from 1977, before you were born, to 1991. Sorry. 1991.
Yes.
When Jagriti was built, is a good 20 odd years. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry. I'm getting ugly. We opened Jagriti in 2011.
That's what?
So about 40 years after.
40 years after, yeah.
So
during that time, you had you still had your poultry business and did you still have your other businesses going, or was theatre already a full-time thing for you in those 40 years?
No. I was an advertising man, basically. In theatre, very, very involved in theatre. Like many people were, and I still remember asking Alec Padamsi, famous theatre group who played Jinnah in Gandhi. I asked him once when he was in Bangalore. I said, why are there so many theatre people in advertising? He says, Jagdish, you got it the wrong way around. The question you should be asking me is why are there so many advertising people in theatre?
Right.
Simple. It's
Right.
only a stage removed.
Right. Right.
It's only one stage removed.
Right. And you also did a lot of voiceovers. I mean, that is something that you did as well. What I hear of my father is that you were also popular voiceover artist. Did that happen after you joined theatre, or was it something you were doing before?
No, it came after.
It came after. And why do you think that it is important for people to participate in theatre, as an audience, or not just as a performer, but also as an audience? Why should people participate in this culture?
If you look at three words, Broadway in New York and West End in London, what are these? What pictures do they give you? Broadway, New York, West End, London.
You're asking me personally?
Yeah.
For me, it's all about, because Broadway dancing is, I'm a dancer, so for me with Broadway, it's all about grandeur, it's all about stories, it's all about stating, trying to make stories interesting and more presentable, putting all the arts together. That's what it is for me. Music,
It
dance,
is, right? Same in the West End.
right,
I don't quite know how many, but there are streets of theatre after theatre after theatre.
right.
On Broadway, they tend to be on that one street, but you also have roads going off, which will have other theatres. Both of these spaces, let's talk about one space. They generate several hundreds of thousands of dollars or pounds
Correct,
by ticket sales.
right,
And most plays in the West End or on Broadway are booked 6 months ahead,
right.
1 year.
Hmm.
And in fact, there's a little tip for people. If you want to go and see a show on Broadway, buy the ticket in London.
Okay.
If you
And
want
what?
to see a play in the West End, buy it in New York.
Why do you?
This is if you're going from one place to the other. Because these tickets are available both in New York and London for plays in London. And they are tourist giveaways. One of the reasons you go to London, or one of the reasons you go to New York, is to go and see a show.
Right,
Now, these two activities of dance, drama, music, comedy pay for the theatre, the crew employed in the theatre, the actors and directors and choreographers, etc., who
right,
work on a production. They pay for all their salaries. But they also go to building a corpus of 1.5 times to twice the amount for local service industries.
correct.
London pubs,
Hmm.
West End pubs in London depend a lot on the fact that they are in theatre land.
Hmm.
People
Right.
come there, even if you don't have a ticket, you will go to the West End to see the posters up in the theatres and pop into a pub for a drink and a meal.
Right.
Similarly on Broadway, twice as much income is generated in the region of Broadway and West End
Hmm.
because they are theatre spaces
Right.
located in these areas.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, we don't have that similar kind of social ethos in India. Theatre going is not. Bombay is one exception, perhaps. But even there, you don't have theatres that run for years, doing nothing but the mousetrap in the West End has been running now for 60 years. This one play is run in London in different theatres. We've moved for the last 60 years. Now that is one indication of how popular the cultural activity of going to the theatre.
Correct.
We don't have that similarly. But if you talk to somebody, and if there's somebody here who says, hey, what is he saying? In the sabhas which open in the winter in Chennai, you will have the same thing. People waiting for the sabhas to open, and they will go to the kacheris. Right? You agree?
I'm not really sure of it, so I will not say agree or disagree.
No, this is all Indian Carnatic classical music sabhas. Will be conducted in theatres in Madras.
Right.
Or Chennai. And they will be packed every night. But this will only be in the winter months.
Okay.
I don't know about Bombay's Tamasha, the Marathi theatre in Bombay. But we do not have anywhere the same kind of concentration and audience support that you have in the West.
Why do you think that is? Because, as a culture, like India is known for its performing arts, be it dance, be it music. This is something that is a part of our heritage as a country. But why do you think that in a country like ours, something like theatre going does not exist in the society as a culture? Why do you think so?
Doordarshan. One word. Doordarshan. No, because I know of people who have worked and performed with traveling companies in Kannada theatre, in Marathi, in Tamil theatre, in Bengali theatre,
Correct.
who go from village to village. They perform, people like Utpal Dutt. He played a character called Samudra Gupta, I think, was in Surya Shikar, hunting the sun. They used to go from village to village or village headquarters to village. And he used to get shoes thrown at him when he got up the stage by an audience that was so involved that this villain had to be
beaten.
So they would take off their shoes and throw it. And Utpal Dutt says, this is how. But these are language theatres in rural areas that have not been contaminated by, and I use that word very reservedly, contaminated by television, by cinema. So that live theatre, I don't think still continues as it used to. But then we'll have somebody like Suresh people perhaps being able to tell us about Kannada theatre.
Right.
Or Anand Nag, if they're listening or watching. So we do have it. We do have audience loyalty, obviously to theatres that we identify, that have become part of our staple living. So you'd have Kannada theatre, Tamil theatre, as I say, Marathi theatre, very, very tamasha, very popular in Maharashtra. Definitely Calcutta Bengal Theatre,
Hmm.
Yatra. Let's face it, listen, we are looking at talking to you now in the language that I am
Hmm.
and being listened to by whoever we are being listened to. We comprise 6%
Correct.
of the population.
Right.
And you say, no, no, not 6%. Make it 10%. All right, 10%.
Are you saying that it's just the English theater that doesn't have a, like a regular audience or a good crowd attending to it? Or, but if you
No,
look at,
because
huh?
look at yeah.
Because if you look at even regional theater, like Pune, for example, has a decent theater scene. They have a good theater scene, but still they find it so hard to fill the auditoriums, even if they're doing regional plays like Marathi plays or Hindi plays. It is still hard for them to fill the theaters.
As I said, no, what has this is it. Doordarshan. If I
Right,
can sit at home and watch it.
right.
When I spent a lot of time with a rural development organization called Action Aid.
Hmm, hmm,
Um, and if you brought money to a village,
hmm.
you brought electricity to a village. You know what the first thing they brought?
Sorry?
Television set.
Ah, okay. The first thing they bought is a television set, right?
They may not have had enough money to say, oh, let's get a pressure cooker
Hmm,
that
hmm.
will make chickens disappear. They wouldn't get a pressure cooker. They'll go and buy a television set
Right.
so that they could watch Doordarshan. And I think this has done a tremendous amount for, my dear, there'll be enough people who will argue that it has integrated the country, it has brought issues that are of national importance to individual village homes and stressed how important they are. I agree. But the cultural scene, is this happening in the West End? It is. Is this happening on Broadway? It is. Audiences are going, and I'm not talking about COVID, no, pre-COVID. The, the, the whole process is not as endearing,
Hmm.
as enthralling as it used to be.
Right. So it is, of course, like live performances do suffer. It's not, I don't think it's just theater. Even when you look at dance shows and all of that, I think, of course, it's hard to get an audience that is, more regular, more interested in being part of it. So sometimes I think that the only solution to that could possibly be getting children interested in these arts as early as possible. Teach them to appreciate performing arts. So why do you think that introducing children, especially to theater or any other performing art, is very important?
I started off this whole thing by saying about how all of us,
Right,
we all grew up play acting.
right.
And I remember being part of Cops and Robbers and then getting shot and falling down dead very dramatically. I can't remember who was necessarily the leader of this group. And I invite others to suggest. I don't think there was a leader. It was tended to be a rotating
Hmm,
leadership.
correct.
And you played hospital, you played office, you played
Hmm,
cops and robbers. Cops and robbers, of course, was the most popular.
right.
And we used to go around with a stick, supposed to be a rapier, with a coconut, half a coconut shell, making the what is that word? Somebody gave it to me. on the sword, guard for the hand.
Right.
We used to use a coconut. We used to go out and sometimes poke somebody else in the eye, and he'd go home and that'd be helpful. So, children are there. The thing is, William Wordsworth said famously, epigrammatically, the child is the father of the man. I don't quite know what this meant in those days, but I still remember my two sons. I'm talking now maybe 30, 35 years ago, coming to the breakfast table on their way to school. And they would be talking to each other. I wouldn't understand a word they were saying. They were talking about the new computer. And they had this very basic, I think it was BBC Basic. It was a basic computer called Basic.
Yeah, correct.
Which was an acronym for Beginners Applied System Instruction Code.
Yeah, correct.
Oh, you remember that?
Yes, we had it in school.
Oh. So they talk to each other, and I wouldn't know what they're saying.
Right.
And of course, that's gone. It's got the growth of that is exponential. And today you've got, how do you manage to work with somebody who is old enough to be your son in your company? That used to be a question that was asked of us.
Right.
Because the boy who is now working in the company as the head is only 30 years old. Some of them are only 25 years old.
Right.
And they're heading multi-billion-dollar organization. Sundar Pichai and our friend, the head of Microsoft. Sundar Pichai is whatever, Google. And Microsoft head is there'll be enough people who.
Right.
Come on, Sriram, tell me who it is. But children are already there.
Right.
Sorry, Jagdish, you asked something? I couldn't hear you.
Sriram, who's the head of Microsoft?
Satya
Nadella.
Huh?
Satya Nadella. Satya Nadella.
Satya Nadella, another Indian. But there are many of them in Silicon Valley. But these are all youngsters. They all went to college in Madras or wherever, who are heading international companies.
Right.
Who have thousands of people reporting to them. In fact, so many people that a lot of them don't report to them, but report to various intermediaries. So the young learning life skills through theatre is already happening.
Right.
And I'll have enough people on this panel now who will confirm that this whole business of role playing, of creating a corporate situation, of risk management, or attrition problems in workforces, and how you tackle those situations is already being done.
Right.
And you're using very simple theatre techniques in management.
Okay.
I had to teach graduate students when Professor Eapen was head of the, I can't remember the organization, many years, Professor Epan asked if I would come and conduct some lectures. And one of the things we did find at the finality of the thing was to create a situation and ask the class to break into teams and find a solution. What did they do? Without us telling them, we didn't tell them. Because we would then go round after about 3 or 4 or 5 hours to meet with them. And they had started role playing. As you walked into their group, one of them would stand up and say, Mr. Raja, I am the CEO of this company. Come in, sit down. This is our finance chartered accountant. This is our marketing person. And they would introduce people by designations, not by names. And these people again would drop into character. They were role playing.
Right.
And today you have enough of this happening where life skills being taught through theatre is a thing of the past. You've always done it.
Right. True. I mean, I think.
As I say, I'm very concerned about global warming. I have very definite opinions on what is going to happen. And I do remember standing in front of a group of school students where the heading of my speech was Mea culpa. Mea culpa in Latin means my fault.
My fault.
Mea culpa. Culpa, culpable, the same root word.
Right.
And I stood up and apologized for the things that our generation had done. And you're seeing the effects of it. Of course, these youngsters were very gracious in telling me that I shouldn't take on the blame myself. Again, in character. But they are inheriting a problem which only they can handle. And I believe only they can solve.
Right.
Carbon emissions. Polar ice caps being destroyed. Water being made more and more gold item. They're soon going to be, and we've said this, we're going to be trading in water. We're going to be fighting water.
Right.
And these youngsters, I think, have got enough on their plate to worry about things. Will they use theatre to develop life skills? I'm sure they will. But I'm not going to tell them. They know it already.
Right. But do you think that being involved in theatre, like if a child is involved in theatre, like in schools nowadays, they have speech and drama classes and all being introduced to children. Do you think that adds to their personalities? Do you think that in any way it adds to the people that they become, and does it help them in any way in their careers in the future?
Definitely. For the very simple reason that when you do this and you do it like we are doing it now at Jagriti,
right,
you are doing it to a ticket-paying audience.
Right.
An audience who come in there to watch something, and they pay to buy a ticket to it. So you have this responsibility. But then what are we doing?
Correct.
There are 6 or 8 or 10 or 12 of us, or even less, maybe only 2 of us, who go up on that stage. And what do? 2 of us, or a group of us, or half a dozen of us, tell the story. That's all we're doing.
Right.
We're telling a story by talking to each other.
Hmm.
Now, this story could be Alice in Wonderland. It could be a play about the kitchen sink, where we've had enough plays about that.
Hmm.
Where, in fact, in Britain, the kitchen sink drama was a genre that
Oh.
existed sometime.
Oh. Okay.
We are telling stories.
Hmm.
That's all we're doing.
Right.
And if you believe that you are a good storyteller,
Hmm.
you can do it on your own,
Hmm.
through dance, through music. And let's face it, you have a ready-made audience these days in the Americas.
Right.
You can travel from New Jersey to California. Have you done this?
No.
Not yet. Not
Not
yet.
yet. Not yet. I will.
Because dancers
Right. Oh yes.
traveling from here to the United States, particularly,
Right.
not so much in Britain and Europe.
Hmm.
You are cultural ambassadors taking
Correct.
very deep-rooted, very identifiable, very sacred almost
Right.
cultural forms
Correct.
to countries where they are hungry for them, and many of them in the audience are from India.
Right. Very true. It. I mean, I have traveled for dance, and the style that I do doesn't really represent our culture. I'm into salsa and those styles, but the fact is that there is
You're
a.
into what?
I teach and perform salsa and bachata.
Oh,
So
oh,
those are my dance styles.
gotcha.
Uh,
Okay,
but
interesting.
but that said, whenever we do travel abroad for our shows or our championships or whatever, there is a huge like demand for Bollywood or classical Indian dancing. There is like, and it like you're right. We paint a different picture to them when we travel to their countries. They have a completely different idea about what India is, how Indians are. But when they see us, they're like, oh, okay, so you actually speak in English. You can speak in English. So, so sort of, I feel like as artists or as anybody who's traveling from one country to another, sort of opens up their eyes. And when you're an artist, I think you get little more attention from people also. People are looking at you, they're watching you, and they're like, "Oh, Indians are not, they're not traveling on elephants, or they still have those perceptions very strangely that do you really travel on elephants?" I'm like, no, no, we don't.
Yeah. But do you know Lud Vijay?
Of course, I do. I started with Lude only. I started with Lude's studio. And yeah, we are all part of that gang.
Is he listening?
I hope he is. He must be listening somewhere on Facebook or something like that.
Oh, good.
But
Okay.
yeah, he started at Lude Studio, and then now we're all doing our own thing.
Okay.
So my next question to you is, being in theater, like you and your wife are both uh, theater personalities. Do you think that somewhere, besides the fact that you have a common interest and passion, are there any ways that it helps you keep your relationship strong?
Runa, Arundhati and I, and there's a poster up in Jagriti, in 1984, did a play called Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf
Hmm.
by Edward Albee.
Hmm.
Four of us on stage, and the two of us, our husband and wife, entertaining a much younger couple who've come in for dinner that evening.
Hmm.
But trying very hard to be good hosts, but finding it very difficult to keep inner fires from smoldering. So that family secrets. We used to rehearse this in Bangalore, in the city. We'd get back into the car. I was George, and she was Martha. Of course, George and Martha, nobody ever asked what their surnames were. But if you pried a little, you could go back now and pry. George and Martha Washington. George Washington. I'll be having a side swipe at American, the pinnacle of America. We'd get into the car in Museum Road, drive back to Whitefield, 10 in the night. It would take 20 minutes, 25 minutes, and we wouldn't say a word to each other. We were still George and Martha. It took us several hours to come back to the farm, sit down and have a meal, and then have a conversation. So we've lived now, I think next July, it's going to be 50 years.
Wow.
Because we played George and Martha on the stage. No, you see, the thing is, and again, you see, we've both been involved as performers, as directors. We've helped in various aspects of it. Not more than I, perhaps, but costumes, backstage. That's the great thing about theatre. It's a great leveler.
Right.
You could be the watchman who comes on and stands on stage right with a spear looking ahead for half an hour and then walk off, having nothing to say.
Right.
But as Laurence Olivier says, if that is what you're doing, the play is about that dancer standing stage, right, without nothing to say.
Right.
The whole play is about him. So it's a great leveler.
Right.
It's an incredibly, it is a creative process.
Right.
There are people who say, oh, Jaggi, you've been on stage so often. I'm sure you're not nervous when you go on stage. I say very simple. The day I'm not nervous, I'm there. If I do not go on to that stage with, I'm sure dancers feel the same thing.
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
If you don't go on to that stage with a feeling of occasion, of performance,
Yes.
of something that, no, as I say, if you don't go on to that stage with a sense of occasion,
Right.
of it being something, and oh, come on. And I keep saying, Sachin Tendulkar, when he goes out to bat, does he take guard? You know what guard is? You put your bat up and you signal to the umpire to get a position on. I've played so many blooming games, I don't have to do that. Does he do that? He doesn't. He takes guard.
Right.
Or used to. You've got to be true to the calling.
Right.
And there's no question of, oh, come on, I have done this 500 times, I'm going to do it one more time.
No.
It will never work. It will never work.
Yeah. And that never happens, I think. I mean, I don't think, do you know anybody who is like that, who doesn't feel nervous when they're performing? I don't know anybody like that, no matter how many shows they've done.
No, what I do know is people backstage who get extra talkative.
Right.
I go and sit in one corner.
Yeah.
Facing the wall. But there'll be somebody behind me who become very talkative at that time.
Right.
And talk to whoever it's possible. He comes trying to talk to me, and of course I don't listen to him, so they soon disappear. they'll get talkative. Maybe it's their way of
Yeah.
controlling this.
Right. Right.
But I must admit that you don't see crass disrespect.
Right.
And that is definitely disciplines backstage,
Yeah.
which people don't understand if they come backstage and they see something on the floor, they'll pick it up and put it on the. Now you turn around to them and say, "Listen, it's on the floor because it is supposed to be on the floor." That's where the actor picks it up from. Don't touch anything backstage.
Right.
Leave everything where they are.
Yeah.
Leave well alone.
Hmm.
Is a famous.
True. Even I think even things like your movements backstage, your interrupting the next performer, the next performer can't go through. There's a lot of different things backstage I think are very interesting sometimes to see the way they are in different countries, the way they are here. It's quite interesting to see the
Sorry,
different.
I didn't quite get that.
I said, like you said, backstage discipline is something that is very different in every country. It's very different in India. Is different. So this is something I have noticed. Like people are so different in each part of the world. Like when we are in India, if we are backstage, the dancers are jumping around. They're all that, and the moment you go maybe to Australia or somewhere in Europe, you see them quietly stretching. They don't talk to anybody. So it's interesting. It's interesting how even backstage has its own role to play.
Yes, very definitely. And in India, I mean, I still remember playing cricket in London
Right.
with the Indian Gymkhana, and I was feeling in slips. And the batsman had got out, and the other chap was coming in. And I was chatting to the other slip fielder next to me. And I said something, he said something. And I pretended to kick him. So I raised my leg. The captain, what is his name? I can't remember his name. Bengali gentleman. He says, Jagdish, off the field. I said, what? Off the field. Then I realized he was being serious. I said, but no. Jagdish, off the field. So I walked off the field. They played 10 men till lunch.
Wow.
At lunch, he comes to me and he says, what the hell were you doing? You know you got spikes on your boots? So I said, yeah. He said, suppose you had, and we had a case of tetanus. What do you think would have happened? I was stunned. But that's how you take the game. You come into bat, you take guard, and the umpire will say, right arm round, 3 balls to go. He'll tell you that this bowler is going to bowl right arm round the wicket, and you have 3 balls to go. You get, again, they're all geared up for this.
Right.
Important. It's got to be there. You've got to respect you've got to respect what you do.
Absolutely. I think this is one of the reasons why I feel like children, whether they take it up professionally or not, I feel like at some point, getting children involved in performing arts teaches them these things. I feel like it makes them very going into performance, doing that one show, or that rush that you feel just when they call your name and you have to walk on stage. I feel like those things build a lot of resilience in children. They become a little more, that's my opinion. Do you think the same? Do you think the performing arts can do that for kids, like make them more confident? For sure, because if you're performing in front of people, somewhere it does help your confidence.
The thing is, we again, Arundhati more than I, we have been involved in school productions in Bangalore. As I say, part of the Trinity College, London, of which we are the Bangalore hub. We offer courses in speech and drama as per the syllabus designed by Trinity. And this leads to a certificate. There are different grades. It leads to a certificate. These certificates are prized items because they're recognized across the English-speaking, definitely across Commonwealth countries, and increasingly United States have started accepting that the diplomas that are given in Trinity College are equivalent to, they have an equivalence to degrees in the US.
Right.
Not directly interchangeable, they are. And we've attended these school productions where the object is to try and get as many students on the stage. But I must admit that all of them, the standards of production, performance, of organization is very high. And this again is played to an audience of parents basically, and is taken very seriously. So schools are making sure that students, of course, in school, the school teacher walks in and you all stand up and say, "Good morning, Miss." But the disciplines that are used in the teaching process do extend to extracurricular performance. This would happen if they were playing an inter-school football match. But schools that way do, I feel, bring a sense of importance to these activities and not treating them as extracurricular and therefore, can be just done away with.
Yeah. Absolutely. I completely agree with you on that. I think whatever these children take up, it shows that they're probably interested in something. It shows a side of their personality also. When a child chooses a particular extracurricular activity, it is a big reveal into what kind of people they are, what their interests are. So you're right. I mean, I wish schools would take it more seriously. And more importantly, I would think that, parents at some point play a role. They do not treat extracurriculars as an important thing. They don't.
Hey, what does Sachin's parents think? What did Rahul's parents think? Rahul was a student at St. Joseph's.
Right.
What did they think when he went up with his cricket bag saying, "I'm going to play"? And how did, the thing is, he was captain of India.
Right.
Rahul, Anil Kumble. They're all people I know. They have themselves brought a degree of discipline, of dedication to this. And as the captain in Indian Gymkhana forced me off the field because he thought I might hurt a fellow cricketer. These are all standards of performance. But the biggest thing with drama, you get together to tell a story. The house lights go down. If there is music comes up to a crescendo and subsides. Curtains go up. Lights come on. And the actors who open the play come on stage and say their lines. In India, we have the situation of the Shutrata, which is, again, a tremendous device which we shouldn't lose touch with. Shutrada, who comes, Shakespeare has a Shutrada in between who cracks a few jokes,
Right.
who has nothing to do with what is happening on the stage. But here, the Shutrada is very involved with what's happening. The whole process of going on, dimming lights, sound comes down, stage lights come on, and the play starts. It's drama.
Right.
And after that, it is, I keep saying this, what it does teach members of the performing arts in drama is trust and team.
Right.
Trust and team. That dancer who comes on and stands for half an hour stage right, with his head straight, upper head like this, he doesn't start doing. He does that, everybody's looking at him.
Right.
You'll be surprised how an audience will say, hey, that watchman is not looking straight ahead, he's shifting his eyes and looking right and left. They will notice. So it is teamwork to a very, very high order.
Correct. Right. Absolutely.
And trust. They will, of course, you have people in theatre. I'm sure they will be there in next station. Will come and say, have you got your job? Say yes. Then if I'm directing the theatre, say, listen, please, worry about your brush that you have to take.
Right.
Don't worry about the screwdriver that the other fellow has got to bring. Leave that to him. Consider only what is important to you. And the moment you say, have you got your screwdriver, you're not trusting your team. It's not your job, it's his job. He will do it. There's a stage manager also who will handle it. Don't distract yourself by getting in charge, putting yourself in charge of something. Don't do that.
Right. So at Hoopsters, one of the things that we look at very seriously is getting children to appreciate the arts. Why is it important for them to do that?
Why is it important to have culture in civilization? Why is it important for people like us to know about the recipes that our grandmother used in the kitchen? What is this desire to be the Bharatanatyam dance, who will spend 2 years doing nothing more than just going down on their haunches and coming up?
Right.
Why do they do it? Why are they so keen on these performances before a very, very, very appreciative audience? They will know exactly when you've gone wrong.
Right.
Why do they do it? Why do they go through this process of carrying on traditional cultural, as I say, whether it's cuisine or dance?
Correct.
What is it that the human being has that learns for this kind of thing? I must tell you a story. This we had a couple of English theatre people who came out with a thing called theatre science. And their reason was, as they explained, they said in schools in excuse me, in schools in England, there was a divergence between the arts and the sciences. And they were going to use theatre to converge these. So I said, almost immediately, I turned around to the chap who was saying this and said, no, you won't find that problem. So he said, oh, why not? So I said, no, because the greatest thing with our scientists, our men of science, is that they're also very avid spiritualists. C.V. Raman demonstrated his techniques by putting iron filings on the mridangam and then tapping it to show how these filings formed specific shapes. We are all very spiritual. And by that, I don't mean we are religious. There is a sense of the spirit which directs our scientific thinking, our scientific temper. These are very important qualities in the fabric of society. And as I say, you will have somebody like, I know enough of them from the Indian Institute of Science who go back home in the evening and will play the veena. There's nothing great. He's a professor in particle physics, and he goes back and plays the veena. So our children, I don't think they need to be directed to do this. That's already there. I love the word. All of us know the word education. Yes. It's a very important item on the menu of development. Education. What is the root word of education?
I don't know.
It is educe. The meaning of educere is to bring out from what is within.
Oh.
To educe is to bring out what is already within. So you don't impart education.
Interesting.
You let the person being educated to grow into enlightenment. And I believe very, very strongly that our generation to come, the generation that is today in 10th standard, and is going to be the Satyan Nadellas or the Sundar Pichais, don't need to be guided. The child is already a father of a man.
Right.
We have come so far in our evolutionary process that the younger they are, the more equipped. And of course, technology has helped. This little thing that we're talking to each other on is something that has existed only in the last 50 years, 40 years.
Right.
But as I said very much earlier, my sons were having a conversation about this at the breakfast table that I couldn't understand. They were saying something to each other. I couldn't understand. Another story like that is Computer Point was a very new computer company that was retailing computers and making it very accessible. They didn't have showrooms, they had machines installed in these open plan offices. And I still remember Sumit, my second son, going into this place and then disappeared. I don't know where he'd gone. So I went into this, and of course, these open plan offices, the partitions are high enough to hide anybody sitting down. But when the moment you stood, you can stand and look across the space. Yes.
Correct.
So I was wondering where he was. So I started sneaking in and looking over or around the entrance of each one of these little cabins. I then found a Sardarji, adult Sardarji, kneeling on his elbows on his knees, talking to Sumit, who was then about 10, and they were having a conversation. Sardarji must have been an MSc in computer science and applications, talking to Sumit, man to man. Except he would have been about 35, and the other man was 10. I almost feel that, that the human race has evolved to this, this computer.
Right.
The fact that they use it the way they do. The fact that you've got applications now available. I thought the damn thing made a telephone. And you could hold it to your ear, and you didn't have to have a wire reading from that to a base unit. But today, what can you do with it? It's empowering, it's knowledgeable.
Right.
And most of those people involved in that business are young enough to know their plans.
Right.
So we don't need to lead.
Right. Yes. I love the educate thing. That was a interesting learning for me. Educe. Very interesting. Are you
No,
able to
really, as I say, they have problems which I won't be around
Right.
to have to face. But I am very, 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 very concerned about what is facing us on this planet. And I have faith that we'll leave it in good hands.
So thank you so much for joining us today. This was a good talk. And I will be sharing the video on our channel as well, called Hoopex TV. So anybody wants to share or watch it again, you can go on to Hoopex TV on YouTube and check it out there. Thank you, sir, and I hope you have a lovely evening. Thank you all who joined us today. Thank you so much for being part of our show, and I hope you all have a good day too. Thank you.